the link out to the COC, and anybody that misses the live training is able to jump into the recorded version. Anybody that volunteers for the Coconino County Point in Time needs to be able to either attend this training or watch the video. So that being said, I just need to make sure that I'm letting everybody into the waiting room that's waiting, but I wanted to introduce myself. Can everybody see the slides that I'm presenting? It's a different view on my end. Thank you. So I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Sarah Rendon, and I'm here on behalf of Catholic Charities.
And I'm Rebecca Faria, and I'm with Flagstaff Shelter Services.
The first slide, which Rebecca was making fun of me about, is just a slide explaining that we do have a Facebook page. I know that's kind of antiquated, but this is a homegrown operation here. And Facebook is a good way for us to be able to post kind of real-time information. So follow us on Facebook. I also send out information through the COC, but again, this is a little bit quicker way of getting information out there. If you all have suggestions at the end of this meeting in regards to anything we could do next year, social media wise, I am happy to take those suggestions.
Okay, so the first slide just talks about what we're going to be going over in today's training, and that's going to be the purpose of the point in time count, the importance of recording information provided in an accurate and clear manner, personal safety and survey etiquette, following and completing the survey document correctly, completing all questions accurately, and using the choices provided without additional extraneous information.
All right. So what is the point in time count? So I know our PowerPoint is going to be kind of wordy, but some of these I'm just going to kind of talk through. So the point in time count is a HUD requirement for COCs nationally. It is a single point in time count trying to capture our unsheltered individuals at a single point in time. So this year, the count takes place January 24th through the 28th, technically, asking people where they slept on the night of January 3rd.
23rd.
What's that?
23rd.
Yep, asking where people slept on the night of January 23rd. So HUD uses PIT count data to evaluate, measure progress in ending homelessness. So what that means is they take the numbers of folks that we count and use that in terms of gathering data for various funding sources and things like that. We know that in Coconino County, sometimes that can be difficult because this count takes place during winter. So it's more important than ever that we count as many folks and as accurately as possible. I will leave this up here for a sec so you guys can read it. I don't want to just read straight from it, but it is used, the PIT count is used for various things such as state and local program and system planning, and to make progress ultimately in ending homelessness. Rebecca, you want to read this one?
Absolutely. So like Sarah said, this year's PIT count is going to be conducted January 24th through the 28th, but the times that we're having people sign up to volunteer will be the 24th, 25th, and 26th. You're able to keep some surveys in your car and conduct them the 2 latter days. We just don't have volunteers coordinated to sit at certain locations and ask people. Participants will be asked where they slept on the night of January 23rd, and surveying will generally take place in known locations where people gather. So if you've gotten onto our sign-up sheet, you could see the traditional places that we set up volunteer stations, and that is going to be discussed in the future slides. But as well for the mobile units, it'll just be going to places where you either have seen people experiencing homelessness like downtown or maybe behind Walmart or things like that. So that's where the mobile units will go. The surveys must be administered by volunteer staff or a person who has watched this training. The surveys are also available in Spanish to accommodate individuals who are bilingual or monolingual. and that should be administered by a volunteer who speaks fluent Spanish. And what that looks like, if you guys come across a person who speaks Spanish only, we will give you myself and Sarah's cell phone numbers, and you'll call one of us and we'll connect them with a translator. So make sure you complete all the questions of the survey, and all volunteers must sign a statement of confidentiality. So what that looks like is it's going to be the first thing you do when you get to your assigned location. It'll be very clearly marked, and just to get into the habit of doing it, as soon as you get there to your station, or if you're a mobile unit, sign the confidentiality agreement, and that'll cover you for all days and times and locations. So you don't need to sign it every different time slot that you're volunteering, just the one time. Okay, and the unsheltered point in time count objectives: to continue to increase volunteer and coverage to survey new locations and populations not previously identified, continue to improve the quality and usefulness of the information collected, and documenting the process with photos and media releases. And we'll talk about those agreements in the next few slides.
And this is just a little bit more on HUD priorities. HUD identifies specific populations each year that their intended focus is on making sure that specifically we target those areas for the count. So this year, it's pretty much everybody, but we want to make sure that we are focusing on identified all persons experiencing homelessness in the Arizona Balance of State COC. We want to make sure that as we're conducting surveys, we're respecting all individuals that participate. We focus on equity to ensure individuals have not been excluded in participating from the count, such as making sure translators are available, etc. Incorporating the use of expanded demographic categories. So they have focused a little bit, and they do take feedback. Like, we will look at, as you know, as folks that administer surveys, we will look at the surveys before they send them out each year. And HUD and ADO really do a good job of taking into account our suggestions in the past regarding things such as how people identify their gender or how they identify their race and ethnicity. So they are really good at incorporating some of that feedback. And from year to year, you will see those changes reflected on the point in time. We focus, as always, on unaccompanied youth and minors, outreach and engagement with the tribal communities, veterans, individuals that identify as LGBTQ+, and of course, individuals and households that meet the definition for chronic homelessness. So the definition of chronic homelessness is down below. This training is always kind of a cool opportunity because we have a lot of folks in the meeting that are providers, as well as folks from the community that may not work regularly with those experiencing homelessness, such as students, members of the community, things like that. So there are some things in here that a lot of you I know already know, but it's good to include it for those of us that don't. Next slide, we have Sergeant Dustin Coons with the Flagstaff Police Department. I'm very excited to have a member of the Flagstaff Police Department on here once again this year. And we just really wanted to have him on here to talk about some tips and safety tips and tricks.
Yeah,
so thank you so much.
Absolutely. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So just a couple things we wanted to go over with everybody, and a lot of this is common sense, but just to reiterate some of it, you know, if the hours that you guys are working, if you have an option of working one or the other, daylight versus nighttime, just being able to stay in those high visibility areas, you know, working in pairs, you know, staying with somebody. And if you have multiple people going out to an area and they're doing, you know, kind of walk arounds or whatnot, it sounds like you guys are maybe going to specific areas, but, you know, maybe keep groups in the same area and then the whole group moves to the next area. You know, use caution if you're going into some dark areas or some alleyways or back behind buildings, things like that. You know, if they're kind of some out of the way places, just kind of, you know, make sure you know where your location's at, just in case you need help with something, you know where you're at, or if you need to get assistance for somebody that you're working with, then you know where to, you know, call and let them know where you're at so you can get that assistance to you guys. Some things like wearing name tags or, a high visibility vest, like a neon traffic vest, that type of thing, that may help identify yourself, especially to the people you're contacting. So they know that it's, you're a group or you're working with, somebody type thing. And then it allow, especially if we have the snowstorms or anything that's going on during that time of year, or at the end of the month here, that you're visible to everybody else that's driving around. If you get into the nighttime hours, make sure you have your flashlights, and some extra batteries, make sure your cell phones are charged up, and, bring your snacks and water, some warm clothes with you. I would also suggest that maybe having a representative for the entire group every day you guys go out, just call into the Flagstaff Police Department and let them know what you're doing and the hours you guys are going to be working. So that way they can put a note out to all the patrol officers that are working. So they just have a heads up that you guys are going to be out there. And then Sarah, if you want to just shoot me an email when that time comes closer, I can help put a note on. We have what we call our boards. So when the officers come into shift every day, they have a briefing, and then they look at what we, anything that's emergencies or anything that they need to know for the shift. So we can put that on there and just kind of give everybody a reminder that you guys are going to be out there. So that way, if there's any calls for service that come in, or just a heads up on that. So the number for the non-emergency line is just the typical police department is the 928-774-1414. And when you guys are out there, if you guys, you may encounter people that, that have a mental illness or that are intoxicated or maybe under the influence of something. If somebody's coming up and needing, they need a ride or they need food or, whatever it is that they need. And if that's something that, you think that you want to help take care of and help provide for them, you can call that non-emergency line, and then our dispatchers will see if that's something that our CARES team can go out for. And that CARES team works 365 days a year, 7 days a week, but they're only on 9 to 7, so 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And just so you guys know, there's staff. That CARES team is staffed by one EMT and then a TAROS member, so they can handle, it's things like minor mental illnesses. If people need rides to the shelter, if they need food, they have snacks and water, some drinks that they bring with them, stuff like that. So they're a great help if you guys run into somebody that needs some help, so you're just not walking away from that. But again, if you guys encounter people that just don't want to talk to you or don't want to be bothered or for whatever reason, just walk away. If somebody wants to get in an argument or anything like that may come up, just walk away from it. And as always, if you need any assistance from the police officers, don't hesitate to call. If it's a non-emergency, again, that number is that 1414 number. And then by all means, if it's something where, it's an emergency, whether it's for you or for somebody else, if the temperatures are really cold, you find somebody that, needs immediate medical care, just call 911, let them know what you need, let them know where you're at, and they'll get somebody out there to help you. So, but that's about the most I can give you guys. It sounds like a lot of these guys have done this before, and a lot of volunteers are helping. So is there anything I can answer for you guys?
Thank you so much, Sergeant Coons. We very much appreciate the partnership with Flag PD, and thanks again for joining us.
Yes, ma'am. So I'm going to log off here, but Sarah, if you need anything from me, you've got my contact information, so feel free to reach out and I'll help you however I can, okay?
Absolutely. Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Right.
Sorry. So the day of logistics. So what does it actually look like to volunteer for PIT? So this year we will be administering surveys in two ways, like I mentioned earlier, stationary surveying sites and mobile surveying, just like it's been done in the past. The stationary survey locations are as follows. Location 1, the East Side Library, 3000 North 4th Street, number 5. Location 2 is the Main or the West Side Library at 300 West Aspen Avenue, downtown. Location 3 is the Family Food Center on 1903 North 2nd Street. And then lastly, location 4 is the Senior Center, and that's down by Thorpe Park, downtown. And then for stationary shifts, you could, if you're the only one at your volunteer shift for whatever reason, you have Sarah's number and my number. You can reach out to one of us and one of us will provide coverage or get coverage to come be with you for that shift. And when your shift is over, please wait for the next volunteer before leaving your booth. And if they're late, please reach out to myself or Sarah. And if needed, pass the supply box to the librarian or facility management. All the stationary sites would know what's going on, and we'll be keeping the boxes there so you can turn them in there if you need to. Please don't leave surveys or incentives at the booth unintended.
So I wanted to just go into a little bit of detail because I know some of you may not have volunteered for the point in time before. So I just wanted to expand a little bit on what it actually looks like. Rebecca did a really good job of going over the stationary survey locations. When you click on the link to sign up, you're going to either choose a stationary site or a mobile unit. And the mobile units this year, and I may be jumping ahead, I'm not sure if the next slide talks about it, but the mobile units this year are taking off from the Crown. And we will have, I'm just going to jump to this guy, but there you go. So there's the address for the Crown. So if you sign up for a mobile unit, you know that you're going to meet at the Crown. Those are units for individuals that have a vehicle or a partner with a vehicle, because you are going to be going out and about around Coconino County. These ones obviously are surveying and Flagstaff. We do have our path teams that kind of cover the areas outside of Flagstaff, but still within Coconino County. So they will do mobile units out in Kachina, Williams. I see Shay Richardson on here. She's from Page. She will cover that area of Coconino County. So our mobile units here, we're really just looking at Flagstaff. Rick, our supervisor with the Path Outreach team, will create some maps for folks, and those will kind of help you with some tips and tricks on where to find people or where people gather. But most of us live here in Flagstaff. Some of us work within the field. We have a general idea of where people may gather. So all of those places are good to go out and survey. Once your shift is over, if it's a mobile unit, you will come back to the Crown and pass off your box of supplies to the next mobile team. And it's a good idea to say, do kind of a warm handoff, like, hey, we covered the west side of town. We went behind the Sprouts. We checked in the alley behind the Walmart. We weren't able to hit up, behind the Bookmans or whatever, but we saw some people there. We think that might be a good idea to check out. So super, a warm handoff is really great. And again, like Rebecca said, going back to this slide, if you sign up for a stationary unit, you will be, at this place for 2 to 3 hours with your bin of supplies. We work with these community partners year and again, so there will be a comfortable table and some chairs for you guys to sit during your shift. So it's up to you whether or not you choose to volunteer for a stationary shift or a mobile unit or both. Either way, if you're out of supplies or something comes up that you have a question about, feel free to call us. We're kind of on call for those days during the point in time. So
I just wanted to say, for the location of the Crown, for people that might not know where it is, it's located directly west of the Museum Club and also where the old Railroad Cafe used to be.
No, that's great. Thank you. So I added in this slide this year to talk about our bins that we have. When we talk about that, we actually lost the bins, so we have to buy new bins. It's a whole thing. But each bin will contain everything that you need for surveying. So like I said earlier, there will be a bin at every stationary site and a bin that gets transferred back and forth for the mobile units. That'll have everything you need. So it'll have clipboards, pens, it'll have masks and hand sanitizer for anybody willing to use that. The first thing you're going to want to do that Rebecca explained is fill out a confidentiality agreement. We'll have those in there, and then it'll be very clearly labeled where to put the signed confidentiality agreements. Of course, we'll have surveys for folks. We'll also have a resource guide for that. If you come across anybody that has questions, we can simply hand them a resource guide. The maps will be in there, and then a media release that we can talk about later, but it will have everything you need. Again, if you can't find something or you have a question, call one of us. We also have some folks that have done the point in time for many, many years that sign up as leads. You might be lucky enough to have Michelle on your team. She's a great resource for questions. So there's a lot of us that have done this, but again, there's some folks that you're going to get that have already reached out to Rebecca and myself that are just members of the community that hear about it through our press releases or our little stories that pop up in the paper, stuff like that. And we also work very closely with NAU. I'm always trying to get students out here to do the point in time. A lot of times the point in time is their first kind of exposure to working with unsheltered individuals. And so it's a very cool opportunity to really get out there and do some work with folks. I will turn it over to Rebecca.
So we wanted to make sure to thank our below partners for providing incentives for survey participants. So we have worked closely with Flagstaff Family Food Center, and they are providing snack packs. Also, Hope Cottage has provided hygiene supplies. And then everybody's favorite, the Better Bucks. Those will be provided courtesy of Coconino County Health and Human Services, the City of Flagstaff Housing, Shadows Foundation, and the Art Flores Memorial. And do we want to talk about, so basically once someone has completed a survey, you can offer them one of the incentive items, which is either of these three. If they need a hygiene pack, and if they want all three, that's totally fine. We have enough plan to make that happen, but it's a good way to incentivize people when you're, excuse me, and Sarah will do like a little mock survey, how to actually approach people. But that's when we would say, if you complete this survey, we have some incentives to offer you, and those are the incentives that we have.
Perfect. And these are just some additional resources. The sergeant talked a little bit about utilizing the non-emergency police number. They do, as he mentioned, they do know that we're out and about those days. I've never personally ran into any sort of a dangerous situation, but of course it's good to be conscientious when you're working with anybody. So he gave some good tips and tricks, but they are aware that we'll be out there surveying, which is always really helpful. I will do exactly what he said and shoot him an email reminding him of the dates. We are not there to provide services or anything like that. So we're going to want to just make sure that we're referring to the appropriate, resources such as 911, Taros, things like that. We do have a resource guide, but this is not a time to really get into our case management selves. I know it's really easy to do that, but what we're doing is collecting surveys. So we can hand the resource guide out. We can refer people to Front Door. A lot of us know the resources in the community. That's fine. We can refer to the guidance center, whatever we need to do. But it's really, while you're doing the point in time survey, isn't really the time to put on your case management hat. And I know that's hard, but that's what the resource guides and the referrals are for. There's our phone numbers again, in case you guys have questions.
Okay, so safety precautions, and this was big when COVID was a big thing, but it's still applicable now. So we will provide masks and hygiene supplies to volunteers and survey participants if you wish to use them. Those will all be in the bins that we will be providing. We would advise you to clean and disinfect high-touch surface areas regularly or as needed, such as clipboards, pens, etc. Avoid close contact and be mindful of maintaining 6 feet between you and others when possible. Again, this slide was created when COVID was a big thing, so just use your best judgment in keeping distance between you and others. If you're not feeling well, please stay home and contact Sarah or myself at those numbers. Okay, so this one is basically just talking about how we build rapport and talk to clients. So it's pretty self-explanatory and common sense. So I'm just going to talk about it a little bit. When we're dealing with a vulnerable crowd of people, we just need to make sure that we're remembering some things such as obviously respect, compassion. Sometimes letting people be heard is important, but we also want to make sure if someone needs to talk and they're taking more time than is adequate, that you redirect them back to the survey. But be polite and show respect. We always want to say, so they'll tell us their first name when that's the first part of the survey. And then it's nice to say, like, is it okay if I call you Mike? And that way you can use their name. It's kind of a personal touch throughout the survey. Just be concise and brief as best as you can. And there's that number 5 about gently redirect if the individual gets off track. Keep focus on the individual and make sure to really listen and hear their responses. Be appreciative. I think manners are pretty basic, but please and thank you. Definitely thank them for their time at the end of the survey. And then this is similar, but just kind of as it relates to sensitive questions, which some of the ones we ask are, display those active listening skills, just to make sure, and eye contact, like nodding and just staying focused with that individual so they know that they have your undivided attention. Show you that you understand their message, not just their words. Again, just really listening and hearing what they're saying, and either repeat it briefly so they know you heard them, or nod. And then again, like compassion is a big part of this. So I'm sure anyone that's here has that in them, or they wouldn't be volunteering. So just, just really listen to what they say. And if you can relate in any way, or even just appreciate how they're feeling, let them know that.
That was great. Thank you. So I'm going to go over some survey do's and don'ts. So this talks about working in teams of 2. I know that the officer talked about not going out after dark. Our scheduled point in time, like times, are not after dark. Most of them are in daylight. The latest one we have is over here at our food center on 2nd Street. That's 4 to 6 as they're serving dinner. So we don't expect that any of our volunteers are out and about in the dark, other than maybe Path Outreach, who does winter outreach anyways, and they're specially trained for that. So all of our outreach teams and things like that are teamed up in teams of 2. If you sign up for a mobile unit and perhaps your partner doesn't show up, what do? You call Rebecca and I, and we will figure that out. We don't want anybody going out, even in the community, surveying on their own. We want to make sure that we're pairing people's up. Introduce yourself and your team member and explain what you're doing. So Rebecca went over this a little bit when she talked about incentives, but we're just going to want to approach people and say, hey, my name is Sarah. I'm with the Coconino County Point in Time. I have a couple questions here, a little survey that might take 5 minutes of your time. If you're interested in answering some of these questions, I have either a hygiene pack or some Better Bucks, a snack pack. And usually most of the time folks, are excited to do that. If not, no worries. Would you be interested in a hygiene pack or Better Bucks anyways, right? We usually have plenty of donations from our community partners to be able to give out some incentive if folks need them, regardless of whether or not they take the survey. We don't want to just be handing out Better Bucks to everybody because, like Becca said, they are a hot commodity, but they're for those in need. Remain calm and de-escalate any tense situations, right? Don't match people's energy. If people are getting super escalated, you want to try and bring that down. And again, we're not doing case management. We're conducting a survey. So if folks are getting escalated for whatever reason, we're able to just walk away, utilize PD if we need to, but oftentimes walking away and not engaging is enough. We want to maintain appropriate distance, right? We don't want to get up in people's faces. We don't want to wake them up if they're sleeping in a sleeping bag. We don't want to touch them, hug them, things like that. We just want to make sure that we're conscientious in regards to respecting people's personal space. I saw Cammie pop in, which is funny. That was probably an accident. We want to honor requests not to participate or skip questions, right? So we don't want to deviate from the questions in the survey. We want to stick to the questions in the survey. We don't want to start making up our own narrative. However, if there are questions that folks want to skip or are not comfortable answering, that's fine. Please dress appropriately and warmly. Like I mentioned, we do our survey here in Coconino County in January, and you guys all know it's freezing, especially the one when you are at 4 to 6 at the food center. That one tends to get pretty chilly, so wear gloves. Carry your ID and a fully charged phone. It's best not to wear super flashy jewelry and carry your fancy purse. And then, of course, make sure to distribute resource guides as appropriately. Don't guarantee services, right? We're not going to go out there and say, Michelle and Caitlin will get back to you tomorrow in order to schedule a front door intake, right? But here's the resource guide. There is their numbers. Do with that with what you will. Surveying don'ts, and I think I kind of touched on this with the do's. Don't touch people or wake them up. Please don't take photographs without assigned consent. We will go over that. Obviously, we don't want to come off as judgmental. That's not what we're there to do. Don't promise housing or services or market your agency's services, right? We're here as representatives of the point in time. I'm not here on behalf of Catholic Charities. Rebecca's not here on behalf of Flagstaff Shelter Services. Please don't give money or offer rides. And then, don't separate from your team or share any confidential information. Okay, we are going to go into the survey itself, and I just learned how to use the Zoom feature. There's Kristen. Okay, so this is very tiny on my end. So let me know how well you all can see it. Can you all see this on your end?
Looks good.
Thank you. I thought it was important to actually go through the survey itself one by one. And even though I've done this many years, I always still have to go back and really read it because it's just not the most user-friendly survey. So there are times where I'll do a survey with somebody, and then after they leave, I go back and like try and make sure that it looks good because it's not the most user-friendly. So it's getting better year after year, but I think it's important, even though it's kind of dull, to go over every question in the survey just so that once you're out in the field administering it, you know what we're looking for. So the surveyor, of course, is myself, Sarah Rendon. Location, that's a good one. So if it's one of the stationary units, you simply say that, East Side Library. If it is a mobile unit, you are going to say exactly where you are. So you will see here we have city and county. So Coconino County, and you can simply say like PetSmart on Milton, right? Or downtown bus station, or wherever it is that you are. Try to give Crossroads in a brief description. There's a food or a soup kitchen in Page. You can say that. So wherever you are out and about doing surveys, you just do the best to describe that. And of course, Coconino County, the date, AM and PM. And the next section is where you get into demographic information for folks, and it's super fuzzy on my end, but I'm going to do my best. So you're going to first ask people their first name, and then you're going to ask their initials as well as their birth date if they're willing to give it. The point of all this information is really to make sure that we're not duplicating surveys, and people are going to have various levels of comfort with sharing their information. Just respect that. Whatever they're willing to give is plenty. And of course, the first question that starts off the survey is, we're going to ask you about your current living situation. So where did you spend the night of Tuesday, January 23rd? If you're conducting the survey on Wednesday, it's pretty easy to say last night. Where'd you sleep last night? But when you get towards, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you may have to be a little bit more descriptive so that people can even remember, like, what was Tuesday? Oh, that was the day after the big storm where it started to thaw out a little bit, or whatever you need, right? Because sometimes, like, I can't remember where I slept on Tuesday. So you might have to help with that question a little bit, but that's what we're asking. We just want to know where folks slept on that one night. And what we're really trying to determine if they were unsheltered. And it lays out here exactly what we're considering unsheltered versus sheltered. If they were unsheltered, so in any of these locations, we are going to want to check where they were and continue on with the survey. If they were sheltered, meaning in their own home, apartment, whatever the case may be, or the shelter, we stop the survey. So folks that stayed at the shelter, and you will come across a lot of them. Sometimes the majority of the folks that we encounter stayed at the shelter, thank goodness, because it's freezing, but they're counted in a separate shelter count. So we thank them for their time, offer them an incentive, and that's the end. We don't continue on if they've stayed at the shelter. We want to ask them how long they've been continuously without a permanent place to live, right? So consecutively without a place. A lot of these questions, just a quick reminder, we are, as the surveyors, filling out the survey itself. So we're not handing folks the survey to fill out. But there are some times, and you'll see in these slides that Rebecca is going to go over, that, rather than going through every single, option, you're welcome to flip your clipboard around and have them choose what option fits best for them.
Thank you, Sarah. So the next page of the survey looks like this. Number 3, how long have you been in this county? If they remember, you can check one of those. Is this your first time without a home or a permanent place to live, or your first time experiencing homelessness? And if they can't answer that, then mark the appropriate box. If not, how many times have you experienced homelessness in the past 3 years? And for those of us that aren't super familiar with that question, that looks like someone having been housed and then out experiencing homelessness, been housed again, out experiencing homelessness. That's what counts as how many. If it was 3 years, one time homeless the whole time, then that's just one. How did
Michelle
you become?
has a question. I hate to interrupt, but she might want to explain chronicity.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna explain chronicity, but the other thing is this question is a little confusing because question number 4 asks, is this your first time without a home or permanent place to live? But it doesn't give a time period. And the second one says, if not, how many times in the past 3 years? And there's no place for one. So just to keep an eye on that. They may have experienced homelessness before, but it was 10 years ago. So what would you like us to put if they say, oh yeah, I've experienced homelessness before, but this is the first time in the last 3 years?
A good question. Sarah?
I would just say, I would just say on that one, okay, so, and I'm just doing this with you guys.
Maybe just to write number 1 and write the number 1 and circle it.
That's so funny. I'm going to write this down for next year because these are the kinds of things that pop up where I'm like, this is just like, it, you know, we're looking at it and trying to figure out. Yeah, I would write it in, to be honest.
I can do that. And
Yeah.
then the reason we ask how many times in the last 3 years is because we want to make sure we're prioritizing capturing folks who are experiencing chronic homelessness. And Sarah's definition that was in a previous slide explains that chronic homelessness means you've had 4 different episodes of homelessness in the last 3 years that added up to 12 months total. So
Thank you, Michelle.
there you go.
Okay, so, and please feel free to jump back in. Your input is super valuable. So, did any of these situations contribute to being displaced from where you used to live? And like Sarah mentioned, it might be easier that you flip your clipboard around and let them look at those options, or you could just read it to them, whatever feels right. If you could scroll down, Sarah.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. The next question, do you have health care insurance? And then it gives you some examples. Any health coverage counts as health insurance. So this, like in American Indian Health Plan, should be on there, but it's not. So anything that's health coverage, they list access, Medicare, veterans coverage, private insurance, but again, anything like American Indian Health, and there's lots of other plans. So you'll mark that. And then without going into detail, are you a survivor of domestic violence? That's a very sensitive question. They could choose to answer it or not, and that's perfectly fine. If yes, did a domestic violence situation contribute to your current living situation? Again, a sensitive question, but if they wish to answer it, then mark the appropriate box for that.
Thank you. All right. Actually, I'm so sorry. I think I might have skipped. Did I skip this part? Have we seen this slide?
Nope.
Thank you guys for your patience. This is literally my first time presenting a PowerPoint on a Teams meeting. So the next section is for collecting household composition and demographic area. This is the part where I think it gets kind of user-friendly because sometimes it tends to ask the same question in different ways. And essentially what is important to know that if you approach a group of individuals, you're asking them who they consider members of their household, right? So oftentimes we have an individual, you know, sometimes we'll have couples. Infrequently do I come across large families, but you just never know. You want to make sure it's whoever people consider members of their household. So we're not here to pick that apart. It's whoever they identify as their household is what we're going to go with. The important thing to note on the next couple slides is just that you want to make sure that number is consistent throughout, right? So it's going to ask you different demographic information on all those members of the household, and we just want to make sure the number is consistent. So if, for example, if you're working with a household of 2, it's going to be 2 all the way across. So of course, if you have a single individual on number 16, we just mark that they are alone. Of course, they're also trying to identify youth experiencing homelessness. So there are some specialized questions in there, such as I'm under 6. I can't even see it. So I think it's 16 and alone.
It's 18.
18. Okay. I can't see in general, and the way that is really efficient. So thank you. 18 and alone. Or I'm in a household with others. So you are going to want to check, for example, a 1 right here. If you have one adult in the household that's over 25, and that's if it's including yourself. So let's say you have a 40-year-old me. I'm going to do a 1 there. And then, a 1 here for my sister who's 18 to 24. Does that make sense? So so there's 2 of us in that household. And then we're just going to want to make sure that as we go on, we have the same thing, right? So that like here in the column for myself, which is the head of household, I'm going to put myself in the 44 category, and then a 1 over here for my sister. And that's going to total 2. So it right here, I'm so sorry, and I'm jumping around. It's kind of confusing. This part's hard to explain, but so everything throughout the survey is going to match what you put in number 17. So here you're going to check, that you have 2 adults, and those 2 people are going to carry through the rest of the survey, if that makes sense. And then they're going to ask you questions. So you're going to ask questions of the head of household, and then the same questions regarding the members of the household. And they're all going to equal the same number. So I'm going to stop and see if you guys have any questions about that before I blow through it, because I don't know. A lot of times every year I have to reread it. Relatively self-explanatory, but then it's gonna ask for totals a lot. These are the ones where sometimes when I'm done completing the survey in front of somebody, I go back by myself and just make sure that, I capture the information correctly. Same here, right? So let me zoom in so I can see, but you're going to want to capture information for the individual that identifies as head of household, and then family members in regards to race and ethnicity. This year, they did give a category for multi-races if somebody identifies that way, which is great. In the past, they've had you choose 1, I believe, and that's not necessarily accurate. So if that's how they identify, feel free and check that. And then you're going to want to check this side for all members of their household. And again, that's going to equal the 2, right? The 17 is going to carry through. This question asks specifically if somebody states that they identify as Native American, they're going to ask some more specific questions in regards to their tribal affiliation. Again, we're welcome to go through this, but sometimes it's a little bit easier to flip our clipboard around and just ask folks to pick if they wish to do so. Here again, we're doing the same thing in regards to gender identification. Whoops. Thank you guys for your patience with me on this. Again, how folks identify their gender, you're going to ask in regards to the individual being interviewed, the head of household, and then their family members, how they identify. It's going to equal 2 again, if that's the size of the household. So that's really kind of the confusing part, right? It's not that confusing, but when you're in front of somebody and you're going back and forth, sometimes it's a good idea to just take a look at this survey before you head out to volunteer, just so you're familiar with it. As you guys see, I've done it for a long time and I still have to read the little fine print and make sure that I'm doing my best to answer accurately. Where do you sleep most often? There's a couple options there. And then it's trying to identify here their reason for folks experiencing homelessness, essentially. So there's some questions there in regards to that. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the end of the survey. I'm so sorry. to make this confusing. This right here, the gender identity, is the last question in the survey. This section right here is a supplemental question trying to identify youth experiencing homelessness. So I'm so sorry. If the people that the head of household that you are interviewing is over the age of 25, the survey will end right here. If they are under the age of 25, there's these two supplemental questions. Sorry about that. Okay, I will turn it over to Rebecca to talk about this confidentiality statement.
Okay, guys, so this is one of the things I mentioned earlier. So this is something that each and every volunteer has to sign before they could start administering surveys. So this is something that you'll do as soon as you arrive at your stationary site, or as soon when you pick up your mobile unit bin. It's good to just do it right then and there at the Crown. And again, this only has to be completed once for each individual and for each volunteer, not for every time they volunteer throughout the 3 or 5 days. And so the purpose of the confidentiality statement is pretty much what it sounds like, and that's to make sure that we are keeping every person's information completely private and not sharing it with anyone. So this says all information gathered from survey participants will be held in a strictly confidential manner. That means you won't share it with anybody, just yourself and the survey, and it'll be put somewhere. It'll be kept out of public view. You won't discuss anything about an individual's participation. Their circumstance will be not discussed with your partner, your team, anybody else. It's absolutely just for you and the person that completed this, the client that you were interviewing, serving. And then the same thing. Oh, that's okay. I'm done with that.
I think I skipped this part. So there's a couple different media release portions. This one, on the one that Rebecca is talking about, is for volunteers. They check here if they wish to have any photos taken, released on social media. And then this media release is if when we're conducting the survey, and this is, you're going to have to use your best judgment, right? If you're completing a survey with somebody that's super friendly, really outgoing, wants to talk, it is appropriate to say, can I take a photo of you? Would you be willing to sign a media release? But I'm very opposed to getting into people's faces and taking a bunch of pictures. That's really not what this is about. But again, use your best judgment. I have had some very friendly folks that I've interacted with, and I have said, can I take your picture? Anybody whose picture you take, you're going to want to make sure they sign a media release. What we do with that information is we collect it and are able to share with ADO, all the amazing things that we're doing in Coconino County, and it can be used for various marketing material and things like that. You guys, if you follow our Facebook page, you will see some cool pictures of point in times in the past. So just make sure, again, you're using your best judgment in regards to taking pictures of folks. And
okay, and then Sarah discussed the resource guide in a bunch of detail, but this is something, so each bin is going to have a bunch of these available. And when you're talking to someone, or even if just someone comes up to you and expresses the need for community resources, we can hand them one of these. And again, we're not promoting our particular organization or agency. We're just, if they express the need for resources, we'll just hand them a resource guide. And there'll be plenty in each bin, but if you run out, of course, reach out to one of us, please.
And this one is just, we wanted to open it up for feedback. The last 5 years that I've been, helping to co-chair the point in time, things have changed a lot. A lot of it was due to COVID. And now we're able to gather and even hold in-person meetings and maybe steering committee meetings. So this year's point in time is kind of already underway, but I just wanted to put it out there. If anybody that has done the point in time before has any tips, tricks, or feedback, or if anybody has an interest on maybe sitting on a steering committee next year, myself and Rebecca, with some help from Taylor Cochran at Catholic Charities, are really the ones that took the lead on the point in time this year. But I'm really interested in, now that COVID's kind of over, maybe coming up with some sort of steering committee for next year. I think we all have various strengths. And like I said, social media, that kind of stuff. I just wanted to kind of open it up. Any other suggestions or interests folks have in regards to point in time next year, or feedback questions for this year? And if not, no worries. I will send information through the COC, and next year we probably will ask for volunteers for a steering committee. Again, I'm always interested in feedback from you valuable community partners. Any other questions? We're going to record it. I always think it's Michelle wants to be on the steering committee. Absolutely. 100%.
For sure.
This will be recorded. So if you missed anything and want to go back and watch it, I will send it out through the COC as well as the Facebook page. But thank you all so much for joining this training. I know it was kind of a casual one, but the point in time, as you guys can see, is super important for our community and the work that we do. So again, I appreciate it. We do have our link to sign up. So please go in there, sign up. Like I said, we work closely with students, but students are just now getting back. So we don't have a lot of them thus far volunteering. So lots of slots open. Again, reach out to myself, Rebecca, if you have questions. And thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.